With Pokemon Scarlet and Violet releasing this week, I have very limited time to make this video about what is the best mainline Pokemon game. Because in all honesty, I think once Scarlet and Violet gets out, that's gonna take the #1 spot for probably the best game. But until it claims its throne, let's talk about, in my opinion, what makes this Pokemon game the best out of every Pokemon game. And what is the best Pokemon game out of all the mainline games? I gotta give it to Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon. Now, before you click off this video, hear me out. You may not agree that it's the best game in the franchise, but you do have to admit it is the most influential, and that's why I believe it's the best game out of the entire franchise thus far. The Alola region introduced us to a lot of brand new Pokemon features, and one of the big ones was the regional forms. I think across the board, everyone loved the regional forms. Yes, there were some that weren't quite a hit, or at first they were a little confusing, but there were also some really good ones that I think a lot of people loved right off the bat. And I think this is all really important to point out as to the regional forms being introduced, making this game one of the most influential games or even the best game, simply because it really redefined what Pokemon are. Up until this point, Pokemon were either evolutions or like pre-evolutions, or they didn't have any evolutions, they were just what they were. But this introduced a whole new concept and actually gave us, in a way, new Pokemon without having to come up with brand new ideas. And especially when you look to the future, in Sword and Shield, a lot of fans were not a fan of the fact that there was no national dex. There was only a limited amount of Pokemon. Now, while Alola did have a national dex, I believe the use of regional forms kind of helped to like cushion that blow for future generations, and even like for that generation, because as many people know, in Sword and Shield, the biggest response to why there was no national dex was simply because the device couldn't handle it. So if you only have a limited amount of space for Pokemon, what are you gonna do? If you add brand new Pokemon, then obviously some people might be turned off, much like they were in Generation 5 when it was a whole new dex introduced. Or you might have people say there's not enough new Pokemon because they're trying to appeal to the old fans and the people that know what the classic Pokemon are. That's why I think regional forms were such a big hit, because you can introduce a new Pokemon without having to like come up with a whole new concept and having to like remove a spot from the dex. But the regional forms and all the new Pokemon that the Alola region had to offer wouldn't even matter if it wasn't for the ride feature. So what the ride feature did, it allowed the player to call a Pokemon from the wild and help you along your journey, which essentially replaced HM moves, which we all can remember HM moves. They were moves that could not be forgotten. Only certain Pokemon could even learn them. So a lot of people, including myself, when I played through old games, my party was dictated based around what Pokemon could learn what HM. Especially the really minor ones that you get right away, like Cut or Rock Smash, getting a total hit point count of only about 40, I believe, and that's in later gens. So the fact that Sun and Moon got rid of these features altogether was really awesome and introduced the ride Pokemon, just making it to a much more immersive experience and allowing players to build the teams they want to build with no limitations. And I believe the ride Pokemon also introduced the minigame feature that we saw in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, where you could surf on Mantine and you could use the legendary from the game to go through the wormholes and kind of navigate through that intergalactic world. And I think especially the Mantine ride minigame was super useful in making this game just extra fun, because that's actually how you could get from island to island if you so choose. Originally, you had to take a boat to each island, which every Pokemon game, whenever you have to leave a region or like leave an area, they always throw a boat in or some kind of like transportation where it just kind of cuts to black or it does a quick little animation. But the Mantine Surf minigame that allowed you to go from island to island was just super cool in my opinion. You could get battle points from it, you could get rare items by getting enough points and all that kind of cool stuff. It was really just adding to the immersiveness of the Pokemon world, which, in my opinion, again, plays into the future generations. We see that the ride Pokemon now have evolved into the things like using the Celestial Flute in Legends Arceus, or even using Koraidon and Miraidon in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet to navigate the world. Again, I think I'm getting into a little bit of a hot topic kind of water. I think the water is starting to boil around me a little bit, but I will also say the gimmick of Pokemon Sun and Moon and the Alola region of Z moves, I think was fantastic. Dare I even say better than Mega Evolutions. I mainly believe this because if you really critically look at Mega Evolutions, yes, they were very, very cool, but if you saw a Pokemon on the opposing trainer's team that you knew could Mega Evolve, especially in competitive and in the real world scenario, you could assume that they were going to use that opportunity to Mega Evolve, and that was their ace Pokemon. The only way to not really know would be if they had an entire team built a Pokemon that could possibly Mega Evolve, which I think a lot of people ended up doing just because Mega Evolution was really cool and gave you really, really powerful Pokemon. But it was a bummer because long term, you can't give every single Pokemon a Mega Evolution because that would just be way too much information and way too many like over-designed Pokemon, I believe, as well as like finding a Megastone for every single Pokemon would be almost insane. We haven't even begun to see Pokemon slow down, so you can just assume the number of Pokemon we're getting is only going to keep rising. But with Z moves, every Pokemon could do it, it was just dependent on the typing, but there were some Pokemon that could have special Z moves, which is kind of where I feel like they took the Mega Pokemon inspiration and moved it on to future generations. And yes, I say future generations because I believe that this also corresponded with the games that came out after Alola. If you look at Sword and Shield, for example, it was the same kind of situation. Every Pokemon could Dynamax, but only certain Pokemon could Gigantamax. And if you look at Scarlet and Violet, from what we know at the time of this recording, every Pokemon can Terrastalize, but there are special Pokemon that can Terrastalize into different typings from their original typings. Meaning that every Pokemon can be special, every trainer can use whatever Pokemon they want, and they can give it some sort of edge. So I think Z moves were just another thing that made the Alola region an awesome generation of Pokemon. And finally, if you stuck with this super hot take video all the way to the end, let's talk about post-game. Specifically the post-game of Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. As we all know, legendary Pokemon and shiny Pokemon are a huge, huge fan favorite amongst the Pokemon community, and I think Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon did a fantastic job of giving Pokemon fans what they want. Once you beat the game, you actually get the chance to go fight Rainbow Rocket as well as do the battle tree, which just kind of gives you more opportunities to keep training Pokemon and to keep using Pokemon throughout your journey, and kind of gives you a whole new journey to do after the main story. But what that also means is that you can actually use your legendary Pokemon you caught and do the wormhole minigame and go to different portals where you can find different legendary Pokemon and even have a little bit of increased shiny odds, which I think as a whole, a lot of players really did appreciate, and it was really, really cool because you could, again, catch every single Pokemon, or at least you could get every single legendary Pokemon, and this made shiny hunting a lot more immersive and a little bit more just interesting in my opinion, because you had a mini game to do that led you to where a Pokemon would spawn and it would either be shiny or not, but at least you get to play kind of a fun mini game leading up to it, and the further you got, the higher your odds were for getting a shiny Pokemon. So it wasn't just running around the grass, resetting, doing whatever the methods were, hatching a bunch of eggs. You actually had to like get good at another aspect of Pokemon, which was this little mini game, and then you would have a better chance of finding shiny Pokemon. You can also look at Pokemon Sword and Shield, the Dynamax adventures, where you had higher shiny odds, just going through that with friends and kind of just doing these battle after battle, and then at the end, you would hopefully get a shiny, and even if you didn't, it was really easy to keep shiny hunting for a cool shiny Pokemon. All in all, I think every Pokemon game has its merits, and I think all are super fun, but in my opinion, at least until Scarlet and Violet takes the potential throne, I think Pokemon Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, the Alola region in general, is probably the best Pokemon game that we've ever had. If you don't agree that it's the best, I fully understand, but I feel like you have to admit it's the most influential. We've seen so many aspects from that generation get added to future generations now that it was like almost like working as the pre-bridge to this new world of Pokemon that will be Scarlet and Violet in the Paldea region and anything past that. If you really enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below letting me know what your favorite part was, if you agree or disagree with any takes in this video, and as always, subscribe to stay up to date on all things Quoorn's Quest, whether it be my live streams, whether it be these game review videos, or even the fun videos I do with my friends. A simple subscribe is free and easy to stay up to date and help support the channel. That's all for this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and remember, happy questing, y'all. What's up, Questers? Are you enjoying these game review videos and you want more content as I go? Well, lucky for you, over on Patreon, I'll be keeping notes on all my current playthroughs and giving updates along the way. That way, you don't have to wait for the videos to go live to know what game I'm playing and how I'm enjoying it so far. If that sounds like something you're interested in, head on over to Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can get frequent updates on my current game review playthroughs before the videos go live. And as always, happy questing, y'all.